Alright homies, in this video I'm gonna show you exactly how to get a remote developer job as fast as humanly possible, and there are 8 phases that you have to go through. This is not gonna be a cookie cutter video. It's gonna be full of actionable advice that I'm gonna highly recommend you to absorb it, understand it, and then implement it right away without any hesitation. So I'm not gonna show you exactly each step that you have to take, because you have to put your thinking hat on and think about how you'd go about it yourself. But this is more like a framework, okay? This framework that I have been using for years and I have been developing for years, and it works really well for beginners, people who are learning to code right now and want to get paid right now in 2023, 2024 and beyond. So let's get into it. If you want to get a remote developer job as fast as humanly possible, you need to adhere to these 8 steps that I've laid out for you, okay? And I came across these steps by actually trying to help as many aspiring developers as well, and by using something called human psychology, okay? And by using triggers and principles that allow your brain to learn super fast. So the first phase is the HTML and CSS phase. The goal of this phase is not to make animations and crazy looking websites. The goal of this phase is for you to be able to make any layout and any website that you see. Okay, so for example, right now I'm looking at Google Docs. The question that I have for you: are you able to replicate this layout? Okay, every website is made from content and layout. Okay, the content is going to be written by someone, and you are putting the layout into practice and you are making it, usable. Okay, that's kind of the whole point of this. Now, if you want to be a good front-end developer, you need to know HTML and CSS. This is like a given. So if you are amazing at HTML and CSS, nobody cares, okay? It's weird to put it in this way, but let me give you an analogy. So imagine HTML and CSS is like you wearing clothes, pants, whatever. Now, nobody cares about people that are walking on the street and they have pants. Yeah, you can have the fancy ones with flames and, I don't know, designer pants and with Gucci and Louis V and all that stuff. But it's irrelevant, like nobody's gonna really care about it. What people will care about is if you are walking on the street without pants. So if you don't know HTML and CSS, it's like walking on the street without pants. You might risk, having police on your back, and you might be taken and sent to prison overnight. Do you want to go to prison? No. So learn your HTML and CSS. Now, the first goal of this section is, as I mentioned, to understand how to create layouts. So I would highly recommend you to figure out, okay, what are the few tags that I need to use? And I'm going to tell you which ones those are, like div, the button, the input, the list, the A tag. If you know these 5 tags, you can build pretty much anything, okay? So I want you to restrain yourself from wanting to learn all the HTML tags. I think there are like 150, something like that. You don't need all of those, you just need these 5. And with these 5, you can build pretty much anything. Narrow down your focus into these 5 tags and try to build as many websites as possible. Ideally too, the one that I always recommend is the Apple website. So this is made by a student of mine that joined like last month, and this is his website that he made in his 3rd week. Okay, it's almost like one-to-one with the Apple website, and this should be you as well. Okay, if you cannot do this after 2-3 weeks, then you are not approaching this correctly. And this is for you also if you are one of my clients. If it takes you longer than 3 weeks, you are doing something wrong with your approach. Maybe you're not spending enough time, maybe you're not paying attention to the material and so on and so forth. This is for everyone, not just for people that are outside of my program. So you should build at least 2 websites, and you should get familiar with a tool called Figma. So let me show you how Figma looks like. All right, so this is Figma, and it's an application made for designers. So designers are designing something, and then they are giving you this Figma file, and then you are using it, to replicate that design using HTML and CSS. And you should be very familiar with this tool, because it's going to be part of your toolkit as a developer, as a front-end developer. It's very important to understand and master. It's not that difficult, it takes 10 minutes. The thing is, you don't need to be a designer to use Figma, you need to be a developer, but you need a designer to design the stuff for you, or you have to learn design to design stuff, because if you do not design your applications, and if your applications look bad, they will not be impressive to yourself first, and they will not be impressive to hiring managers and recruiters that will actually look at your portfolio. Now, the next phase is to learn about the basics of JavaScript. So here's what you need to do. The first thing is to practice your syntax, okay? So I know a bunch of your favorite influencers are telling you that syntax is not important. And they are right to a certain extent. Like, syntax is not really important. The most important thing is problem solving. But I want to introduce you to a concept called brain points. So let's say you have 2 hours per day that you want to dedicate towards coding. And in those 2 hours, you want to spend 100 brain points. If you have a problem that you need to solve, right? Let's say build a dropdown. If you have to think about the syntax, like how do I get an element from the screen? How do I change the class? Blah, blah, blah. If you have to think about that, you are losing brain points. So from those 100 brain points, you'll be using 80 to figure out the syntax. You have to Google the syntax all the time and whatnot. And then you have 20 brain points left to actually solve the problem. In fact, what you want to do is you want to not think about the syntax, so you can focus 100% on problem solving and spend all those 100 brain points on problem solving. And this is where most beginners are messing up. And I used to mess up because everyone was saying, hey, you don't need to know syntax. But I was like, okay, I don't need to know the syntax, but I can't problem solve either. So then there must be something wrong with me. In fact, the advice that you're receiving is wrong. Practice your syntax. Make sure that you know how to write a variable without thinking, a function without thinking, a for loop without thinking, an if-else statement without thinking. You shouldn't have to think about that stuff. All you have to think about is applying problem solving skills, okay? In this phase, you should also aim to understand programming concepts. But how can you understand programming concepts if you are not used with your syntax? Then you should also focus on understanding JavaScript, because JavaScript is a programming language, so you need to understand programming concepts such as variables, functions, for loops, if-else statements, data structures, etc., etc. But then you need to know how they apply to JavaScript, because JavaScript runs in an environment like the browser, and then those programming concepts are applied in a slightly different way in the browser versus on the server. So you need to understand how it works on the front end, on the browser. So you learn that by building applications. You learn the concept and then you drill it by building applications. And let me show you an example of an application. So here we have an app made by one of my students, as she is following the roadmap that I have created for my students. And as you can see, it's super simple. Let me just refresh so you can see how the app looks like. We have a simple button, and then we have a plus. This is not a button, this is like just a number, and this is a plus button, and this is a minus. If I press on this button, I'm gonna increase the value. If I press on this button, I'm gonna decrease the value. So here are a few things that are happening: changing that value, also changing the color of the background and whatnot. There is some logic that is using if-else statements to detect how big or small the number is, and based on that value, the color changes and whatnot. Then we have this option where we can save the results. We have this other option that says, hey, if we already saved this number, prevent the user from doing it again, right? Again, more logic. Then we have this reset, which is gonna reset the application and so on and so forth. And then we have this idea of let's squeeze more juice out of the lemon, right? When you want to make a lemonade and you have a lemon, you're not just squeezing it once and then throwing it away. You squeeze it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times until there is no juice coming out of it. This is the same concept. You wanna find a problem. Let's say you have a tutorial that you are following, and then you wanna add 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 20 more features until you are out of ideas. You wanna teach your brain to be creative, okay? This is how creativity is created, by exploring different areas of programming. That's how you become a better front-end developer and a better problem solver, by being exposed to these problems. But if you do not try, then you'll never actually understand this, and you'll never actually collect the fruits of your labor, which is making 6 figures and working remote. That's one. Another one could be the typewriter. So you are literally typing, and then you see, you know, the letter that you typed in. That's the first level. The second level is adding a sound. Another thing that you could do is creating that animation. You see how the letter is fading down? It's just another feature. Just squeeze the lemon more. And then we have the screen ruler. Super simple concept. You resize the screen and then you see a different number, and that number is a representation of the window width. Then the next phase is intermediate JavaScript. So the goal is to learn to think in JavaScript. In the first phase, you've been exposed to JavaScript, to programming concepts and whatnot, but now you need to learn how to think in JavaScript, okay? And then you should focus on data, understanding data. So let me show you what I mean by that. If I go to Instagram, here, what you see is a list of persons, right? That's what you think. In fact, what you're actually seeing, it's an array of objects. Each person is an object, and this is an array. Here, this is another array of objects. So you need to start seeing data. This is the purpose of this stage. If your coding course is not teaching you to see data, then you're just gonna take a shit ton of time trying to piece everything together, okay? Because I know there is a massive gap between, hey, this is a programming concept, this is an array, this is an object, but then you don't see how it's getting applied to the real world, right? Maybe you have that problem. I used to have it. And that's because people don't really teach it in the right way. They cannot bridge this gap together. Another thing that I want you to do is to make an account on CodeWars. CodeWars is a website, a platform where you can practice algorithms and start solving simple algorithms one a day, and then give yourself like the first week to fail. Allow yourself to fail in the first week. So try an algorithm. If you do not get it, look at the results, the responses, at submissions from other people, and see what they've done. Okay, see what they've done, and then try to understand it, okay? Because after 1 or 2 weeks of doing that, you'll start to see the pattern, because programming is all about patterns. And then once you understand the pattern, you can start to apply it in your own algorithms, in your own applications. It's as simple as that, but you have to do it, okay? It's not gonna happen if you are not active about it. I don't know how else to put it. You have to be very deliberate about it. Now, I want you to focus on math, array, and string algorithms. Super important. This will help you massively in the real world. I cannot stress this enough. If you do not understand this from my content, I only care about stuff that's going to help you in the real world, not fluff, okay? I don't like fluff. And then you should also build intermediate applications, like for example the to-do app, the calculator, the Pomodoro. So I know that I always say, hey, don't create an app like the to-do app and don't put it in your portfolio, but that's the key. Don't put it in your portfolio. You have to do it so you can learn how to work with data. So for example, a to-do app, like if you go to ChatGPT or if you look at your favorite influencer, you'll see that they are making something very basic, something that is related to the DOM. In fact, what you want to do is you want to learn how to work with an array, because a to-do app, it's a massive array. And then each item in the to-do app is an object, okay? Why? Because you have multiple values that you need to store, like the ID of the to-do app, like the actual text, like the is done property, if the to-do is done or not done, or like pending, or however you want to call it. Maybe you want to have a date of creation, maybe you want to have something like due date. There are a bunch of things that you can add in an object, but you need to start thinking in arrays and objects, otherwise you will not make it as a developer. I want to be really upfront with you and tell you what's important, okay? Then, this is not your portfolio, nor should anyone see this. This is a massive, massive mistake. A bunch of beginners are making these apps that I just showed you, and they put it in their portfolio, and then they wonder why nobody is reaching out to them, and they are writing on the internet that web development is saturated. Web development is not saturated, but you're not ready to get a developer job. You are just in phase 3, as you can see. Now, phase 4 is starting React, okay? And the goal of this is to start thinking in React, okay? So you need to learn the basics of React, like components, props, state, folder structure, component lifecycle. These are very important concepts that you need to master. And I have left a few notes in there. If React is difficult, then you don't know enough JavaScript. If React doesn't feel like a game changer, then you don't know enough JavaScript. I've seen people that just started learning code, and in their second week, they're already doing React applications. It's impossible. I mean, maybe if you are like a genius, then fine. But if you're a genius, you shouldn't watch YouTube. You should already be hired at NASA or Google or Facebook or Instagram or something like that. This is my opinion. I've seen many people that come into my program, they were like messing around with React, and then when I gave them a real challenge, they were struggling massively because they've learned it using ChatGPT, or they rushed through their course and they didn't know enough JavaScript. Their thinking wasn't developed enough. And what I do with people like that, and if you are going to join my program and you have a problem like this, then I'm going to make you go back to JavaScript and have you develop your foundations in JavaScript, so you know exactly how to use React properly, because React is definitely a game changer if you use it properly. And then you should also learn how to work with APIs. So an API, it's, let's say, some sort of service that's going to give you back data. So let's say I want to find what are my friends on Facebook. Well, I'm not going to store that locally. I'm going to store that somewhere. Imagine like a massive Excel spreadsheet. And I'm going to say, hey, Excel spreadsheet, give me this data because I want to look at it, right? So that's kind of how APIs work. That's just to make it as dumb as possible so someone that just started learning code can understand it. There are obviously other things that are happening in there, and I could try to explain this and be more elaborate about it. But in a nutshell, this is what you should learn in phase 4. Now, I don't want you to rush through any of these phases. I know that a bunch of people that are going to bootcamps, they have this problem where in the first week they learn a concept, and then when they're about to get comfortable with that concept, they skip to the next concept. And then when they're about to get comfortable with it, they change the subject again. You don't want to do that, okay? If you get to the point where you start to understand something, you want to double down and do more of that until you can create that muscle memory, if that makes sense, okay? This is super important. I would say do what you want with this information, but I believe that people learn through repetition. The more you do something, the better you get at it, okay? Imagine I want to learn basketball. If I throw 10 times at the hoop, I think that's how it's called, I'm not a great shooter. I might aim like 3 times out of 10. It's not great, it's okay for a beginner, but I want to be able to shoot from every single angle and from almost all distances. And for me to create that muscle memory, I need to just do it over and over and over again. I love repetition because this is how you learn the best, you know, through repeatedly doing something until you become super comfortable with it. Do not skip this phase because it's for you, okay? It's not for me. I don't care if you learn it or not because I've already learned it, but this is what I would do if you would be a beginner, and this is what I'm going to tell you to do if you join my program, okay? Phase 5 is becoming an intermediate developer with React, okay? So the goal is to reinforce and repeat the basic concepts. Again, repetition. The more you repeat, the more you understand. And it's kind of like an upward spiral. You repeat, you understand. Have you ever read a book twice? You read a book now, and then a year goes by and you say, hey, that book was pretty good. Let me read it again. And then you get new lessons out of it. This is kind of how it works with these programming concepts as well. You just do them over and over and over again until they click. If they don't click, there is no reason to move forward. You want to build a few big applications like a to-do app or like a weather app. So we are building both of them, and if you give me a second, I'm going to show you some of the requirements that we have for the to-do app, okay? I have a few requirements: add items, remove items, toggle items, done, undone, should allow sort based on priority, should have 3 sorting options: default, ascending, descending, should allow changing the value of the to-do text. It's a basic app, right? Should save the data in local storage so it persists in the browser so we can see the same to-dos over and over whenever we refresh the browser, and should allow the user to filter the items via an input. So if you want to search for something specific, you want to be able to type it in an input, right? And these are some extras, okay? Add a complexity parameter that goes from 0 to 10. Can sort the list based on complexity using 3 options: default, ascending, and descending. So it's pretty much this feature is the same as this. Repetition from a slightly different angle. Simple, but effective. Then we have can use the power mode feature, which adds up the complexity and priority, and you can sort the list from highest value to lowest, right? So then in this way you can see the most important and the most difficult task, so you can tackle it first thing in the morning, for example, right? Again, nothing complicated. We are just trying to find different angle to practice something that we already know. And another one is when power mode is enabled, only the first task that is not completed shows up in the middle of the screen. So we want to see only one task. and only try to fix that one. And then should allow checklists inside each task. So for example, you have a task there that says go shopping, and then you also want to have a shopping list like buy apples, buy milk, buy cat food, whatever you want to buy. And this is a common feature, and it's not going to take a lot of brain power to implement it. In fact, you're just going to repeat whatever you already know, but from a slightly different angle, okay? And then there should be a progress bar that shows the percentage of the completed task. So if you bought 4 things out of 5, you want to see a percentage sign that says 80% completed, so you don't forget to buy the cat food, right? And there are many other ones. Again, I'm just trying to give you an example. I know this video is long, but I want to give you a comprehensive tutorial and show you exactly what we do in the program, so you can also do it if you can. And you should start learning how to read the docs. This is massive. You don't want to be relying on YouTube videos. You don't want to be relying on Udemy courses and whatnot. You want to go straight to the source, because that's what a real developer does. Because sometimes there will not be, courses done exactly for that thing that you are looking for. And you might have to learn how to read the docs. And this is a skill that you can develop. It's going to be annoying in the beginning because docs are dry, let's be honest. But you have to learn it, okay? Now, phase 6 is about consolidation, okay? So the goal is building a 3-month project to solidify everything. So in our case, we have the to-do app, okay? And it has a few pages. It has a nice design and whatnot. This was a pretty expensive design, I'm not gonna lie. It was like $1,500, something like that. And it should take you like 3 months to learn everything properly. But after those 3 months, you'll be extremely confident in your React skills, in your JavaScript skills, in your programming skills, in your problem solving skills. These things are important, okay? I cannot stress this enough. And you should learn Git. Now, this is weird, right? Because if you look at every influencer says you should learn Git from day one. And I'm like, why would I add all this complexity on a beginner when a beginner should only focus on writing as much code as possible? Why would I teach a beginner Git? Why would I even teach a beginner to use something like VS Code when they can use a tool like CodePen to build their apps quickly? There's no setup involved. They can start up their project from anywhere. Why would I create all these problems for a beginner? There's no need. So that's why we are only learning Git when you are ready to put all your skills into practice. Okay, this is super important. This is very weird compared with every single other roadmap that you've seen online, guaranteed. Okay, learning Tailwind. I think this is a good moment to start playing with Tailwind, especially if you don't like writing CSS. But till now, you shouldn't use any Tailwind. No Bootstrap, no Material UI. You should learn how to write CSS, because if you know how to write CSS, learning Tailwind or Bootstrap is gonna be super easy. Nobody does this. Everyone is taking the shortcut, the wrong shortcut. And at this point, you should learn TypeScript, you should learn Next and add it on top of your React knowledge. Then you should learn Redux, okay, so you learn how to use state management. Maybe you won't end up using Redux, but a bunch of applications are using Redux. Maybe you'll end up using something else. But the underlying concept, the theory, why do we have this library in the first place? What problem does this library is solving? That's the most important thing, and that's why you should learn it, okay? And then what's important here is quality of work. Until now, we tried to push out as much code as possible, to push as many applications as possible, to push as many features as possible. But now we are switching gears. Now we want quality of work. We want to make our code impeccable. So if someone is gonna look at our code or your code, they'll be like, wow, this guy is not a junior. This guy is not some guy that, just tried a few things here and there and is just wasting our time. Because that's why most people are having troubles, with getting that first developer job. Not only their applications look terrible, they are too simple, but the quality of their code and their work is subpar, if we can put it in that way. And now you should also start prepping for the interview, okay? Like trivia, algos, you want to prepare beforehand. And as you are preparing for this interview, and as you are practicing building this 3-month project that I'm always talking about, you will start to pick up the theory. Until now, we did so much practice, and this is the wrong way to go about it according to most people. Most people learn a bunch of theory just in case they need it. But in this way, if you follow these steps that I've showed you here, you'll practice a lot. okay? And you learn just in time when you need it. You don't need to know everything. And now, as you are preparing for the interviews, you will start to get that theory locked in, okay? Because now you have the practice and now you understand, okay, that's what this thing does. That's what this thing does. If you learn theory too early, you won't know exactly how it fits in that mental model that you are creating. You don't understand that because you're not ready for it. So that's why you should start learning theory very, very late in your coding journey. That's my opinion. Now, phase 7 is all about gaining experience. So the goal of this phase is teamwork, okay? Now you need to learn how to estimate your skills, okay? Because in a team environment, as a developer, you'll be given tasks. For example, build this for me. Now, as you are self-taught and as you are going about your day, you need to come up with those tasks for yourself. But in the real world, someone is going to give you the tasks. Like, for example, I give tasks to my clients, to my students. And as they join the team project, they have no idea how long something is going to take them, right? They are still getting onboarded, okay? That's kind of the word that we want to use. It's going to take a month or two until they learn what they are actually capable of. That's why you hear, for example, a bunch of people that say, once you join the real world, they learn so many things. Why? Because till they join that, they haven't had the opportunity to do all this stuff. But if you work in a team, you learn how to estimate your skills. So then you'll say, hey, it's gonna take me 3 days to do this. Hey, it's gonna take me 5 days to do this. Hey, I'll have problems with this and this, so then I'll have to read upon this thing and learn about it, blah, blah, blah. That's how you become valuable. That's how you become a valuable developer. That's how you make money. Okay, you learn how to ask better questions because someone is gonna tell you, hey, do this for me. And then you'll be like, okay, and that's it. But a good developer is gonna start asking questions, okay? Weird questions. Questions that the customer might not even think of. Because if you have this experience of building projects, you know and understand possible complications that can appear as you are building stuff. Accountability, right? Super important. You're accountable to your other team members. You cannot just take a holiday. You cannot just do whatever. You have to do what you said you're going to do, all right? And then it boils down to commitment to the project and ownership of the project. You have to be self-motivated, look out for answers, find solutions to weird problems, to weird quirks. That's how you become a really valuable developer. I cannot stress this enough. And then phase 8 is job ready. So you should build a resume and exaggerate the fuck out of it as long as you can back it up. As long as you put enough work in phase 7 and phase 6, you can pretty much say whatever you want on your resume. And at this point, you should be able to learn things really quick. So if you say that you know something that is in a job description that you have no idea about, at this point, your learning rate should be really, really high, and you should be able to pick up everything in like a matter of days, okay? And you should massively cold apply without any emotion, maybe 10, 25 applications per day. And that's what I was doing whenever I had some free time, watching TV or watching YouTube or on the toilet or on the bus. I was just pressing the apply button without even caring about it. You could automate parts of this process, or you could even delegate it, okay? I've made videos about this and I think you should do it. Why should you waste your time? If you don't have time, if you have a full-time job, you need to be as efficient as possible, right? Because you could use the time that you would have used to apply to prep for interviews or to build up your application. So you should also network like a motherfucker. Send emails to people, call DMs, and you should also follow up till they block you, okay? So this is the game plan. This is a complete guide that's gonna help you become job ready and make 6 figures and work remotely as a developer. This is what we are implementing in the coaching program, and I think I broke it down pretty well, you know? I think I uncovered any mysteries. If you follow this process, you'll get hired. Of course, there are other 100 steps for each phase, but overall, the structure should give you a lot of insight into what you should be doing and what you should do to not waste your time. And if you want to get all this and much more, live calls, interview prep calls, the actual projects that you need to build, that crypto app that I showed you, the team project, need to apply for the coaching program. That's the first thing in the description. I can guarantee you that if you are not doing it, you are literally wasting your time. So this is for you if You want to become a programmer, and you want to become a programmer in the fastest time frame possible without wasting any of your time. If you are an 18-year-old and you have all the time in the world, maybe this is not for you. But if you are in your late 20s, 30s, and time is of the essence, and you don't want to waste your time trying to figure out and piece together free resources or cheap resources, then this coaching program is for you. If you want to check it out before you join, that's the second link in the description. I can guarantee you this is going to be a game changer for you. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.